of all, I would like to thank God for this day, for this moment, for your graduation, for making it. I would also like to thank and acknowledge Mr. Clarence Cross. Yes. Thank you for the invitation, for allowing me to be here. And also Ms. Salcido, the founder of Cesar Chavez, and your lovely principal, Dr. Courtney Miller, all the staff and faculty at Cesar Chavez, family and friends, and class of 2019. Yes. So I was made aware that your theme is living and leaving your legacy. What is a legacy? What does it mean to have a legacy or to leave a legacy? Legacy in its most basic definition is money or property left to a person by someone who has died. Legacy is also defined as something that is a part of your history or that remains from an earlier time, or a situation that has developed as a result of past actions and decisions. So what would a legacy be for you and for me? Yes, it would include money and children. Notice I said we will leave behind. Yes, I expect that each of you will plan to leave behind some inheritance for your family and your children. For this is how we break cycles of generational poverty or property. Your legacy is your history. It is the impact that you have made on your friends, family, acquaintances, co-workers, community, region, and the world. Your history, your impact is based on your own actions and decisions. Did you see on the news or hear your parents or teachers talking about in May of this year how the African-American billionaire Robert Smith pledged to pay off all the student debt of the 2019 Morehouse College graduates? This is an example of legacy. Not only will Mr. Smith be written about in the history books for this historic moment of courageous and selfless action and remembered for decades and generations to come, but he has helped to provide a typically disadvantaged group of people with a debt-free head start in their careers and their lives. In a country where the wage and wealth gaps between whites and people of color continue to widen. He has done something that many people, even many wealthy people, would not dare to do. He is giving and restoring economic power to those who need it the most. This is a part of Mr. Robert Smith's legacy because he made a conscious decision to make a change where a great societal injustice of inequity between races exists. But let's be clear, you do not have to be wealthy or a millionaire or a billionaire to develop your legacy, Ms. Salcido. Honestly, you're never too young to think about what your impact will be. That's right, thank you. At 17, 18, 19 years old, you are not too young to think about, write out, envision, and begin to work on your living legacy. You can start right now at your age with what you have. As a matter of fact, many of you have already begun your legacies as you are graduating from high school today, which is a huge accomplishment. like to think about death. And for many of us, it's hard to face the reality, Mr. Cross, of our mortality, which is the reality that one day we will no longer be roaming on this earth. But honestly, the sooner you embrace your mortality, the sooner you will value your life that much more, each and every moment. And you will desire to create positive change with the short time that you have. And we know that this is true. Some of you, while you were in elementary school, middle, and high school, lost a family member or lost a friend. Unfortunately, too many teenagers and young adults have been shot and killed or beaten and abused to death in Washington, D.C. and the D.C. metropolitan area. But instead of focusing on the tragedy and what is very scary of this idea of death, it would be helpful to focus on the victory in living and consider how much good one can do in a lifetime if he or she chooses to. I would like to share with you how a small family of 4, including myself, have created and established a legacy that is living and will precede us when we are dead and gone. Now, that legacy does not start with us, as our ancestors began the legacy long before we were born. But for the sake of time, we will hone in on this family unit. I was 13 years old. I was a freshman in high school, nervous, yet excited about this new challenge and being in school with the big kids. I remember it vividly, clear as day. Grandma called me and my 2 brothers to her in the living room. I could see the worry and the sadness on her face. She had some bad news. She shared with us that our mother, who had been in the hospital, had died. There was a terrifying silence in the air when we heard the news, and then weeping. My brothers and I balled up in my grandmother's arms on the couch and just cried. Going to my mother's funeral was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I couldn't believe that I would never, ever see her again. I was confronted with the reality that my mother would never be at my high school graduation, never be at my college graduation, my wedding, to bear witness to me giving birth to my first and second child, for the precious moments and the everyday moments. I would miss our late night talks. My mom would always tease me and say, "Yaz, you are book smart, but you lack street smarts." And so we would talk for hours. Sometimes she would pick my pimples, and sometimes I would massage her back, and she would school me on the hard lessons of life. Failed relationships, betrayal, embarrassment, failure. You know, real talk. Or as some older folks might say, she would give me the real. My mother suffered from severe depression and struggled with substance abuse and addiction to prescription drugs. My mother had me a week before she turned 19 years old. She was a teen mom. From age 3 till about 20, my father was in and out of jail and federal prison. But in my older age, I do not judge them or blame them completely. They both had some traumatic experience as children and adolescents. For one of my parents, it was struggling with abandonment by a father. For another, it was having to act as an adult before it was time and having to hustle to sustain life. But God gave them a gift and still gave them favor over their young lives that were filled with trials and tribulations. Their greatest legacy was their baby girl, and from my mom and stepfather, 2 sons. My grandmother was and has always been the matriarch of our family. She is a strong pillar of faith and a virtuous woman. She took all 3 of her grandchildren to church and to Sunday school each and every Sunday. She dressed us up in Sunday's best, fed us even when she sometimes did not have food to eat herself. She taught us how to read and write at home when we were toddlers. She enrolled us in extracurricular activities and summer camps. For me, it was swimming, tap dance, jazz, ballet, and chorus. For my brothers, it was football, basketball, tennis, and any other sport you could think of. We sang in the children's choir and the young choir and served as junior ushers. She sacrificed to make sure that we could go on all of our field trips, and she made sure that our uniforms were clean and pressed before going to school every single day. Grandma disciplined us when we did wrong and when we were acting ugly, and she praised us when we were doing the right thing. She demonstrated love and affection with hugs and kisses and tickle sprees. With movie nights, going to Blockbuster. Y'all young folks will have to ask your parents for Blockbuster. And VHS. And we played board games as a family. My grandmother demonstrated for us what true love is, which is shown in its greatest form in sacrifice. Maybe she knew this, but through her love and sacrifice for her child's children, her grandchildren, she was establishing her legacy. As an educator for over 30 years in early childhood, she touched, inspired, molded, and influenced thousands of families and children who are now successful adults. As a Sunday school teacher and Bible study teacher for many years and continues to, she has helped many people to grow in their personal relationship with God and with each other. It doesn't stop there. When I was a junior in high school, I founded the nonprofit Scholarships for children of incarcerated parents. My organization provides college scholarships, mentoring, and a support network to youth who have parents who are in jail or prison. To date, we have awarded over $150,000 to 51 scholars who are all graduating high school seniors like yourself, students from the DC metropolitan area, all with incarcerated parents. One evening, I was sitting in the dining room with my grandmother where we have had many intimate talks over the years, and she said to me, Yasmine, there are so many creative scholarships out here, but I don't see any for youth with incarcerated parents. She also came up with the name Scholarships as the creative genius that she is. Little did I know that at 16 years old, my grandmother's aha moment and observation would become one of my living legacies. I pondered on this as I began to do research, and that's when I learned that over 2.7 million youth in the United States have an incarcerated parent. That is 1 in 28 children. 10 million children have had an incarcerated parent at some point in their lives. That's 1 in 9 African American children, that's 1 in 28 Hispanic children, and that's 1 in 58 white children in the United States that have had an incarcerated parent. This is from the Rutgers University fact sheet and Pew Charitable Trust. I'm not making these numbers up. I thought, wow, there are so many other children like me who have an incarcerated parent. And as a fellow in LearnServe, I was challenged to identify a social problem and come up with a creative solution called a venture. Scholarships was my venture, which I pitched in front of a panel of judges. Imagine a community version of Shark Tank, and I was awarded a $1,000 seed grant to begin this work. You see, one idea, one action, led to the start of an organization that is growing in impact and changing the lives of young people like you, who look like you and me, who come from the same place we come from. Scholarships is a part of my legacy. All of my sermons and speeches, which I keep in a folder on my hard drive and in a hard copy binder, is a part of my legacy. What I leave for my brothers and children and grandchildren to inherit will be a part of my legacy. My brothers, Michael, aka Mr. Steal Your Girl, aka Mike Guapo, and Gary, aka Junior, aka Big Country, aka Hawk Time, are troopers. Although my brothers admire and look up to me, I greatly admire and respect them. They are overcomers. They are resilient. With our mom passing away when they were just little boys, being raised by a grandmother for the early part of their lives, moving from the East Coast to the West Coast to Canada and back, they have overcome being talked about, being undermined, underestimated, and judged. They have overcome the hurt feeling of being forgotten about. They have always known that they were going to make something of themselves and that always they were determined to put God first no matter how stressful or dire their situations. Michael took the ASVAB a few times, but he was determined to pass it no matter what. He was relentless. Once he passed the ASVAB with high enough scores to be eligible for the branch he desired, he knew that it would take about a year or more until he was drafted or called to report to duty. So in the meantime, while living in Canada, he went to a local college to take classes and work part-time. From the moment he conceived in his mind that he would be a military man, he would go running like 9 miles a day, no matter the weather, no matter how tired he was, and he even did this on holidays. He saved up money, and when it was time, he packed up and moved to Fort Benning in Georgia. He overcame the misery of a period where the military is holding you before you can go into training. Michael watched as some of his peers committed suicide because they could not stand the mental challenge of the new enduring environment separated from their family and friends. Michael endured the psychological gains, the physical challenges, the hunger pains of pre-RASP by prayer, through faith, hard work, and commitment. He endured the obstacle course challenges, staying awake and alert for 23 or 22 hours every day for several days straight, running with heavy equipment in high altitudes, wading in muddy waters, swimming in oceans with heavy boots, and then he became a Ranger. He received his U.S. Army Soldier Blue Cord. Then he succeeded through the U.S. Army Airborne School, where some of his comrades died or came close to death, getting caught in the ropes or injuring themselves when sliding down the ropes or landing wrong. Michael continues to overcome the occasional loneliness and frustration he often feels. Junior is also so resilient and a true soldier. He wants to be a Marine like his father was. He was an amazing, talented boxer. He lives in California. He, like Michael, is determined to pass the ASVAB, but it has taken many times. For a time, Junior was an award-winning boxer. Junior was vicious in the ring, not afraid to knock out his larger opponents. I guess all that wrestling in the house with Michael when they were kids paid off. He would go to the gym every day after long hours of work, and he reads and studies the boxing greats of the past and the present. In the meantime of pursuing his dream of being a Marine, he got into construction and ironwork. Junior decided to learn a trade and join a union where he can get employed anywhere in the country for great pay. Junior was working a full-time job, making more money than Michael or myself. He was even the first to get a car. I'm almost done, I know it's very long. You see, but this is real life though. This is just the beginning. And I want you to be ready and refreshed and prepared. You see, failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is an integral part of success.
Right.
Dare I say it is necessary. But you only truly fail if you give up permanently and or try to take the easy way out. Faith is what will get you through. Do not be fooled. Graduating high school was hard, but this is only the beginning of a very difficult road ahead. And if you were like me, Michael, or Junior, lacking family financial support oftentimes, lacking resources, wanting something but not being able to see it in the physical manifestation of your dreams and prayers, or trying to do something in your family that has never been done before. The kids? You are the kids. These are the, no, this is them. You are doing, no, seriously, you're doing something that many of your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents never had the opportunity. They sacrificed so you could be in your cap and gowns today. That's a hallelujah. You know, you should expect great difficulty. You should expect great challenges. You should expect temporary failures, setbacks, and even tragedies. You should expect people to try to stand in the way of your progress at times. You may lose a loved one. You may not have all of the resources and luxuries and opportunities that some of your peers will have while on the college campus or in the military. You may not have a car for a while. You may give birth to a child or already have a child. There might be a professor who gives you a hard time just because they don't like you or just because they can. You may have a hard time getting adjusted to college level courses or transitioning into a full-time job, or your military sergeant yelling derogatory terms at you and pushing you to your limit. You may be betrayed by someone you called a friend, or you may endure homelessness or poverty for a season in your life. You won't have a testimony without a test. You won't have a message without a mess. You can get through it. You made it this far. The old folks used to sing, "We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord." Part of your legacy will be overcoming these challenges. Your legacy as a result of enduring these challenges will be ending the cycles of intergenerational incarceration and poverty, ending the cycles of single parenthood and physical, mental, and substance abuse. You are the physical manifestation of your ancestors and predecessors' prayers. For many of you, you are the answers to prayers of your ancestors and predecessors who were enslaved in captivity, who died as slaves, who were forced into slavery, forced into being refugees during war, and immigrants who were detained. Your intelligence, your resilience, your grit, your determination, and your drive will have to come from within. You will have to lean on God. Often when you will have to encourage yourself. When others doubt you and call you out of your name, you remember your worth and your value, and that you are not an accident. You were born on purpose, for a purpose, and with a purpose. Stop looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. You are the light inside of a dark tunnel. You are the light in many people's lives. And if you've been hiding your light because of embarrassment, because you want to be cool and not judged, it's time that you start letting your light shine and letting your talents and skills speak for you and positively inspire and impact others. It's time that you take control of your life, because tomorrow is not promised. Make responsible decisions. If you pledged in a sorority or fraternity in college at some point in your life, you will have to memorize the poem Invictus by William Ernest Henley. And it ends like this: I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. You will also learn excuses. Excuses are the monuments of nothingness. They build bridges to at all. So no more excuses and no more why you can't, because Grandma did it, I did it, Michael did it, Junior did it, a lot of your parents did it, teachers, and so many other black and brown leaders did it. Teachers who came from poverty and confusion. They did it, and so can you. Continue building your legacy right here, right now. Write the vision and make it plain. Write your vision of your future somewhere that you can see it and be reminded of it in a journal or a diary or a vision board. Ask God to order your steps and give you the strength you need and the resources you need to carry on to be successful, and give you a vision for your life. Honor your mother and your father, even in their weaknesses, even in their mistakes. Respect authority. Build your legacy so you can live a better quality of life, a life filled with light and purpose, and also that you can make a lasting impact for those around you. Build your legacy by identifying a problem or a need and using your talents, gifts, and skills and ideas to solve it. You build your legacy by earning degrees, by serving your country and starting your own businesses, purchasing properties and establishing generational wealth and leaving it for your families and future generations. Legacy is not about self. It is not about ego. It is not about your pride. It is about what you do for others. Building a legacy involves agape love. It involves sacrifice. It involves you. What will people say about you? What will they write about you? I will leave you with this. Angela Rye, the 21st century black woman of wokeness and regular political news commentator, shared a powerful statement in one of her speeches. She said this: in a day and an age where we are constantly told that the most important thing that you can do this second, this minute, this hour, today, this week, this year, this decade, this lifetime is to secure the bag, I am here to tell you something different.